Ronald Reagan arrived in Paris tonight, he was beginning what the White House views as the most ambitious trip a president has taken in 20 years. In this, as in previous administrations, presidential trips don't just happen. As little as possible is left to chance. Mr. Reagan's next 9 days in Europe have pretty much been planned down to the minute. The government and the press had armies of people in place before Mr. Reagan arrived. The cars that the president and his party traveled in tonight were flown to France days ago in military cargo planes. Those cars and government helicopters ferried to Europe the same way are considered sensitive, politically and from a security point of view, so we weren't allowed to photograph them as they were moved.
Idaho, Charles, Idaho, number 31, 30, 31, 30. Idaho, ID. Okay, thank you.
The desire to avoid sensitive problems prompts the planning that begins weeks, even months ahead of a presidential trip. On April 13th, at Andrews Air Force Base outside of Washington, about 40 government officials boarded a presidential plane for Europe. Press, Secret Service, State Department, military, communications, national security, and other agencies were represented. Heading the delegation, White House Deputy Chief of Staff Michael Deaver. The personal involvement of one of the so-called Big Three at the White House, an indication of the importance attached by the administration to the President's summit trip.
How you doing? Good morning. How are you doing? Good.
This was Deaver's second survey trip for the European visit. His plane was hardly in the air before he huddled with top aides to talk about the news coverage the President might get in London.
Cool. I probably wouldn't get anybody inside 10 Downing Street. You're going to do that outside. And that's very important to get that play and that stress on it. And if you're not able to bring about to the press and you, then the principal news will be the ride with the Queen and the state dinner.
Deaver had beefed up his staff for the summit trip, hiring as White House Staff Director Michael McManus, who had served in the Nixon administration. And just for the European trip, he brought in Eric Rosenberger, a veteran of Ford and Carter overseas trips, to handle press arrangements. There were no formalities as Deaver and his party landed in London, but the next day was to begin a whirlwind preview of the trip President Reagan would make weeks later.